Well, bonjour. Good morning, everybody. Victor Dantas here today. We are about to get started with our Maple Power Conference. I see a lot of the friends joining us already. This is fun. This is great. Really love that we get a chance to do this. Again, my name is Victor Dantas. I'm a Microsoft MVP, a community member for a few years now, and I think the highlight of my day is when we get together to do events such as this. Today, every single presenter part of this event, people who will be talking about more on the soft side, myself and Vicky Rogers will be doing talks on job market in Canada, immigration in Canada, and all the other folks who will be doing more of the technical stuff. They are linked to this land that we call home. They are linked to Canada, and I'm just very grateful to live in this place. But I wanted to highlight that the presenters of this conference, they are currently living in Canada. They are either residents of Canada or citizens of Canada. And we wanted to do this on purpose. We wanted to highlight professionals that live in this country. You see familiar faces that you thought maybe lived elsewhere, faces that you were used to catch in different countries and are now living in Canada. So we really wanted to take the day to celebrate this country. Each presenter will present a topic or a fact about Canada, maybe historic, maybe information about the country that you didn't know, maybe something funny. And I think besides learning a lot of technical stuff, increasing your technical expertise after this conference, you learn your knowledge about this beautiful land that we call home. So without any more delay, and I would appreciate it, folks would let me know if they can see my screen. We'll get started. My session, like I said, will be mainly on immigration programs, the immigration structure in Canada, and how you could potentially move here. So, without further ado, and if any of the team members can let me know that folks can see my screen, we'll get started now. All right.
Yeah, I can see your screen okay, Victor. Looks good.
Thank you, Nick. Alrighty, let's get this thing going. If my mouse lets me. All right, so again, I'm Victor Dantas, Microsoft MVP, 365 Saturday Ambassador, and a Power Platform consultant. You have my QR code. If you want to connect with me in social media, I am pretty active in LinkedIn and Twitter. So if you can join me there, and hopefully I'll be able to help you in the future somehow. Um, my Canadian fun fact. It's basically a historic fact, and it's really tied to the part of Canada that I live in. I live in Calgary, Alberta. It's uh, it's part of the Prairie provinces, but it's the one that's closer to the Pacific, closer to the city of Vancouver, if you will. So we are very close to the mountains. In fact, the picture that you see in the background, it's about 2 hours from where I live. And I think one thing that's really interesting about Canada, it's truly a country of immigrants. Not to say that there are no real Canadians that were born in this land. I mean, you hear from Nick Dolman and Eric Solve. They were Canadians. Solve, I think we can call you a poor lane, Quebecois, a Canadian. But anyhow, but it's a land that's built in a principle of acceptance. I came from Brazil. I am a Canadian citizen now. I'm a proud Canadian citizen. I have to say that. But I feel accepted in this land. So the fun fact that I want to tell is It's basically the land that I live in is part of something known as 3D7. 3D7 is a uh, agreement, if you will, of indigenous nations that have accepted living in this part of the land and yet take part into Canadian history peacefully. So if I show you the next map, you see that all of the colors that you see on this particular map here are representations of indigenous nations or I don't know if the term indigenous tribe is diminishing in any way, and if it is, forgive me, it may be just my lack of understanding on how things work. But you see how vast the territories of indigenous nations are. In here in Calgary, if I drive about 20 minutes, I'll be in an indigenous reservation, and I have friends who are from the tribes. I have people that I know that are from the tribes. I have personal friends who have adopted kids from the tribes, and I can tell is that although there are things that we can still do to improve in the sense of accepting each other, I've never been in another country that has made such an effort to accept people, different people, if you will, people that don't look the same, people that have um, different cultures per se. So that's my fun fact about Canada. I feel very blessed to live in this land, and if you consider moving here, I have lived in the U.S. in the past as well. Lived 6 years, have great friends, love the U.S. But I never been to a country that was so accepting of immigrants and people with different cultures or different backgrounds. So that's my fun fact, and let's move on to the presentation. So my presentation today, the agenda will go as such. We'll understand how Canada's immigration work. We will look into the provincial nominees program. Canada doesn't have states. A lot of the countries, other countries are separated into states. Brazil is separated into states, and the United States, of course, and I believe countries from people who are following us also have that same setup. What would be similar to states is known as provinces. So we're going to be looking at areas of the country, each particular province, and programs that are set up at the provincial level to facilitate immigration. Then we'll talk about the Express Entry Program, Quebec's CSQ, Certificate de Sélection du Québec, other options for immigration, and then we're gonna open the mic or open the chat window for you to ask questions. So let's start it. Express entry. So when I migrated to Canada, there were two major streams to immigrate. One was to apply directly to the federal program, and you would need to pay a fee at that time. It was required to pay a fee, and then you waited. What Canada found out is that the backlog was getting too big, and it wasn't really fair to charge people a lot of money to to take part of the program, and for those who are taking part. Um, uh, to wait without knowing when they would be invited to actually apply and eventually come to Canada. So they switched that program. Instead of charging people from the get go, they changed it to a database where pretty much anybody in the world can submit their profile, and based on the information that they've put on the profile, you'd get points. And people with the large amount of points and people within a specific career path, they would get invited to apply. So at that time, when one is invited to apply for permanent residency, is essentially when people pay fees, submit uh, additional documentation to support their particular application. So that new program is called Express Entry, and I think it made it really fair for those who are considering moving to Canada, that they don't have to spend money until it's really required and it's closer for them to moving to the country. The other part of immigration at the federal level, if you will, is the CSQ, the Certificat de Seleção do Quebec. In that particular trend, you apply directly with the government of Quebec, and in that area, Quebec decides who they are going to select. So you submit your profile when they feel like you have achieved the threshold to be invited for an interview, then you are brought into that interview and you are interviewed in French, and then Quebec decides whether or not you should be selected. So with the selection, with the CSQ granted to you, you can then apply to permanent residency. So those are essentially the two major streams for Canada's immigration at the federal level. And the reason why I talk about federal and Quebec is because Quebec has a peculiar or more a separate immigration path to ensure that we continue to support people who speak English, speak French, sorry, and we still support the practice of that beautiful language. I do speak a little bit of French. It's not perfect. I love the language. And one of the strategies of the government in supporting a francophone population is to ensure that Quebec, the territory of Quebec or the province of Quebec, can select their own immigrants. So it's a great idea and a great approach. So the link below there talks about the requirements for express entry. You have four major categories within the express entry, and that four categories essentially translate to pretty much each province in Canada when we look at specific programs for each province. So the categories are where you come from. The second category is your age. Depending on how young or how old you are, you get points for your profile. Then next category is your language ability. So if you are a native speaker of English or French, and also if you're not native, but you can prove that that you have achieved a certain level of fluency in the language, either English or French. Another area that counts points is the number of family members that you have in your family, the number of kids, if you are married, if your spouse also holds a career experience, so on and so forth. For me, I have three kids. I had two kids when I applied for Canadian immigration, and the fact that I had two kids counted more points for me. So Canada values family, which is for me it is great. Next category is education. Education here is essentially whether you have completed middle school, if you are considering coming to Canada for a trade profession, like something that you do with your hands, more like college graduation or university graduation if you're going for a more technical career or business career. Work experience is yet another category. So they consider education and work experience two different categories. Um, and then last but not least, if you have an official Canadian job offer. Essentially, if you have a Canadian job offer, official one, sealed and marked by the government, that's pretty much your passport. You get lots of points if you have that particular job offer. And it's not just a letter from an employer, it's essentially a letter from an employer that has undergone the Canadian HR department's validation that that job offer is actually valid. and the process is known as LMIA. I think it stands for labor market. The I can't remember what it is, but it's what happens is an employer approaches the government of Canada and says, I cannot hire a DBA in this particular city in Alberta. Okay. And then the Canadian government will assess that need, make sure that no one in Canada or in that particular city can fulfill the job. And once it's that, it has pretty much eliminated every possibility of a Canadian resident or citizen taking that job. It will grant a letter to the employer and say, go ahead and hire somebody from overseas. Okay, that's essentially the model for job offer. It's if a company approaches you and says, I'll give you a job offer, pay me some money and you can come to Canada, it's fraud. Don't go for it. No employer will ask you for money when they offer you a job. All right, that's something I you need to know. So in the express entry, and much like any other program that you eventually apply to come to Canada, you're gonna have to have a passport, of course. You're gonna you're gonna need your school documents translated in the Canadian official languages, that is English and French. So if you want more information about it, I can support you. You connect with me privately. I know some organizations that will do the translation in a way that's valid for immigration application. Um, your language test results have to be done by a official institution, that is IELTS, TOEFL, and there is another one here in Canada. It's a smaller one. I forgot the name, but I can give it to you if you need. But your language tests on the English side have to be done by a official organization, and the same in the French side. Okay. Um, Eventually, as you advance in the process of the express entry, when it gets to a place where the government says, all right, Victor, I like your profile. I think Canada will profit from your presence here. Let's go ahead and move forward with it. When you get to that place, the government will ask you for police certificates. Those have to be translated also. The government will ask you for medical exams. One of the things that was pretty incredible for me when I applied was the care that Canada had for proof that you were health. It's not that they want to single people out if you have any particular condition, but they wanted to control diseases that we no longer have here. So tuberculosis is a disease that was completely eradicated from Canada. So a lot of the exams that you will do, they are requested so that Canada can control the same level of health, if you will, when you land. I know cases of people who had preconditions that those were not essentially criteria that eliminated people, but that helped them when they arrived. So they had access to more medical resources when they arrived. So the idea of medical exams is not to eliminate people if they have a precondition, but essentially to support them when they arrive. Um, and then, last but not least, you need to prove funds. Again, this is not to eliminate people from coming to Canada, but you need to prove that you're gonna be able to support yourself when you arrive, at least for a small period of time. All right, and that's the legal part of the documentation that Canada will request from you, and the express entry program, and also in the other provincial programs. Okay, all right. Programs available in all provinces. Express entry is a huge database and it pertains to the federal level. So when you apply, essentially you're competing with people from all over the world. So the threshold for the points, it's somewhat high depending on what's going on with the country. And the reason why I say depending on what's going on within the country is that the government may determine that they need mechanics, car mechanics. We are lacking car mechanics. So they may bypass the whole pool of professionals in the express entry to look for mechanics within that pool. So people in that career path may be considered ahead of everybody else that's on the program. So that's why I say sometimes the points criteria may vary depending on the need that the country is dealing with. But overall, the express entry program is for the whole country, and everybody in the world that's applying is pretty much competing against each other to get in. Okay, but the cool thing is that each province has autonomy to uh, start their own program if they have identified a need locally in their area or in their state, if you will. And that particular approach is also true for city-wide programs. So when I migrated, I first lived in Quebec City, and Quebec City had a program uh, for IT professionals because at the time Quebec City was investing in creating a neighborhood just for IT companies, and they didn't have enough manpower to support all companies who were coming not only from other areas, other parts of Canada, but also from the United States. So that was the program that I took part into. So um, every basically the what's common on this particular region programs is that they are LMIA based programs, meaning that an employer approaches the government and says, I need this particular type of professional in my area. What can you do to support me? So the government will assess the need, and then if they identify that it's a citywide or region-wide program, they will say, okay, go ahead and start your province-based program so that you can bring professionals over. And that may require an LMIA letter for you to apply. Okay. The other factor on province programs is the education-based programs. I have many friends in Calgary that instead of applying for a job to come to this area, they decided to go back to school. And the education-based program, they work in a way that you come to complete college education. I think there is a minimum of 2 years if we level in all provinces. That may be specific information for different provinces, but what I know is that a minimum is 2 year education based. So you complete a program that may be programming, computer programming in 2 years, or database programming, or business administration. I have a couple friends who have completed that program. And once you complete the program, what Canada will do is Canada will give you a open work permit for 1 year. So you can go hunt for a job and you have 1 year to get a job. After you complete that 1 year experience, you can then apply for permanent residency. So the idea is that you have to do a little bit of investment on your education and you have to support yourself during those 2 years. But then at the end, you are free to work anywhere you can find a job, essentially. And then with that work experience, if it's linked to your education, you can now uh, request permanent residency. And I should say this at the beginning: permanent residency in Canada, it's the same as what people know as the green card in the US. So a permanent resident in Canada has the same rights as a citizen, with the exception of voting in election and also running for government positions. But everything else is pretty much the same. Okay, so next what we're going to look at are specific programs on each region in Canada. All right, so these are live programs today. Now, what you're gonna find out as you start to study immigration in Canada is that these programs are again specific to local areas, okay? And once the need is no longer there, the program is gone. It's finished, okay? So if you're ready to apply to any of these programs, I would say apply right away because they will not stay for a long time. They will, as soon as there is no need for the program, Canada will shut the program down. So the first one is the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. And what that is, it's an immigration program uh, for the Maritimes, for the four Maritimes provinces, the provinces that are in the Atlantic. So you have Newfoundland and Labrador, PE, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. So there is an effort today to fulfill various positions, and in that, IT is included. So IT professionals are part of that particular program. So the link's there for more information about that particular program. It's active, and again, it's open for IT professionals. You can click the link. I can send you this slide deck for you to explore that one. Okay. Again, the goal of the presentation is IT professionals. So this one's live, and if you're considering going to one of those provinces, that's a great opportunity. So next, what we're gonna look at is Quebec. Quebec has, to me, the most mature immigration programs. They are used to receiving immigrants. I was really fortunate to land in Quebec City and have that city be the first one that I lived in. Still have very good friends there, and I miss the city a lot. I really miss it. So does my wife and kids. Do my kids. Okay. Uh, the two links there that you see, Quebec Untitled and Talent Montreal, are from two agencies. They are not private agencies. They do not profit from any jobs that they land for people. They are private companies, nonetheless, hired by the government to ensure that this particular job market needs are fulfilled. So I know Quebec Contact very well. I know people from the organization or people that used to work on that organization, and I know that they are very serious. Okay, so Quebec Contact, they host recruiting missions all over the globe, including Brazil. My job was facilitated by Quebec Contact, my first job, and my immigration essentially was facilitated by Quebec Contact. Um, I didn't do the interviews directly with them, but they pointed the employer in my direction, and again, I'm very grateful for it. But they do conduct interviews all over the globe, and I think we have a good crowd from Brazil in the call today. Uh, they do host meetings in Brazil. I don't know with COVID how things are going, if they're doing it online, but they used to travel to Brazil and interview people there. Now, if you are considering moving to Quebec, you need to speak French, all right? You need to learn the language. Uh, a lot of people, they go through the approach of, oh, why will I learn French when the whole world speaks English? If I wanted to invest in English, I'm better positioned to do so. Um, what I can tell you is that French is still valued in Canada, especially in the Quebec area. I love the language. It's a beautiful language. I was in Paris last year. I was able to communicate in French. I have community friends, power community friends who are in Africa that I'm fortunate to communicate in French as well. It's just a beautiful language. And I mean, if you have kids, uh, and you're looking for a territory that will embrace you, your family, and will support you as you move to a different country, I I may be biased, but I'd say go to Quebec, all right? Because you're gonna love it. Their programs to support families are great in the province. Then you may ask, why have you moved to Calgary after Quebec? For me, it was because my oldest daughter was born in the U.S. and we wanted to give our daughters also the English experience. But if you ask my heart, where would you prefer to live? I'd probably tempted to say I would move to Quebec back. Okay, for my own personal reasons. But if you consider a place and you have families, I'd say Quebec is a very good place to live. But you have to learn French. Okay, you do have to learn French. I studied French for a few months back in Brazil, and I was grateful, very grateful to find a teacher who was Quebecois, and she taught me French, and I attribute my success immigrating to Quebec to her. And again, if you live in Brazil, if you want information about classes there, especially classes that will prepare you for the job market, give you that information as well. Anyhow, so QuebecUntat.com shows available opportunities in Quebec, and they will also uh, help you set up interviews with those employers. And so does Talent Montreal, right? So good information there for you. So next, we're gonna look at Ontario. Everybody who talks about immigration to Canada, they say, "Oh, I want to move to Canada and I want to live in Toronto," or they say, "I want to move to Canada and I want to go to Vancouver, and I am a manager in my country, or I am a software architect in my country, and I know that Canada needs me, and I want to pick and choose the city that I want to live in." Well, I hate to burst the bubble there for you, but provinces such as Ontario and BC, where Vancouver is, they are pretty much saturated with awesome professionals, right? I completed university in the States, but a lot of people who land as permanent residents in Canada, they come from India, they come from Eastern Europe, and they hold PhDs in computer science. They hold all kinds of different degrees, more degrees than the thermometer, right? And you may be like the white fly in your country. You may be the thing, the best professional where you live, but it's really hard to compete with people who have all this education and career experience and are already in the country. So you never find good programs, immigration programs that are somewhat, I wouldn't say easy because none of them are very easy, but are somewhat easier in the big cities, in the cities that are the envy of everybody to live in. So you may consider lowering that expectation and settling for a city that's still very nice to live in, but it's not one of the big cities. Okay. Reason why I say that is that there is really no immigration program for Toronto, for IT professionals in Toronto that are as gracious or as welcoming as the ones in the Atlantic Canada, or the ones in Quebec, or even the ones in the prairie provinces that we're going to look at. Nonetheless, there are immigration programs for Ontario where Toronto is, but they are more on the entrepreneur side of things. So if you want to come to Canada and live in Ontario as an investor, you can still do it. So I'm gonna read some details. It may be the reality for some of you. I don't doubt that you have a lot of money, but in any case, here's the information. So if you want to migrate in Toronto, as part of one of the provincial programs, there is the investor program where you have to prove $800,000 in net worth. and $400,000 if you want to live outside of the greater Toronto area. So you have to prove that you have 800,000 in property, essentially net worth, things that you owe. Okay, and you have to be willing to invest about $600,000 in a new business in that particular region. So 600K in Toronto, 200,000 outside of Toronto, outside of the GTA. All right. So that's pretty much the fact. It's still a possibility if you have that amount of money or a partner in business that can support you there. But that's what I saw currently in Toronto. And again, this may change if there is a need there. Of course, when I say there is no program, what I'm saying is programs that you can go on your own and apply directly. Now, if you have a business that has a LMIA or a letter that indicates that they have extensively looked for professionals and they cannot find that type of professional in the Toronto area or the GTA area, you can still apply if that business offers you a job. Okay, what I'm talking about are programs that don't necessarily rely on the LMIA, relies only on you going there and apply for a job or applying to become an investor in Toronto. All right, so or in Ontario for that matter. Okay, so Manitoba also it's very similar to Toronto right now. I was surprised. I was expecting that Manitoba would have a jobs program at this stage. Being a prairie province, you always would expect that it's the province needs a particular human force or a particular type of professional, but I didn't find it at this stage. There is, however, the investors program going on in Manitoba at this stage. The requirements are a little lower than what you'd see in Toronto. It requests you about 500,000 in net worth, but it didn't really outline the investment requirements. It said that you need to apply, you need to submit your idea, and the province would assess what that idea for business is and then say whether or not you can get in. Okay, so a little more flexible in terms of the requirements of dollar amount that you need to invest in a business in the area, but you still have to prove that you have at least $500,000 in net worth. All right. So the next one here is SIMP. SIMP is a program for Saskatchewan, and you see where Saskatchewan is based in the map there. And so this one, it's pretty much what Saskatchewan is doing is the model of the express entry, where you say, I have this education, I have this work experience, I can speak the language, I can prove it, I have a family, so on and so forth. The whole points program, uh, Saskatchewan is taking that model and saying apply locally. So now instead of being considered for the whole database in Express Entry, you now can apply and compete with people who wants to move to Saskatchewan only. Okay, so the pool of professionals is reduced. So let's say that you work with, for example, C++ or technology or job description that's very, very unique, right? And you put your profile in the database and Saskatchewan looks for that type of professional, you have more chances in being selected in Saskatchewan than applying uh, for the whole country against everybody in the world. So that's what they are doing. Okay, and when you are selected, then the stream works in the same way as Quebec's CSQ. So Saskatchewan will say, I like this guy, I want him to apply, and then Saskatchewan, the government will provide you um, enough documentation that you can go and apply for permanent that residency and bypass the requirement of express entry selection against everybody else that is in the database. Again, the information, the links are on the slides, and I'll make that available to everybody after the conference. All right. So that's for Saskatchewan. The next, Alberta. That's where I live. So there isn't really anything specific to Alberta at this stage, but the education program that I described in the beginning still applies to the province, and the LMIA still applies to the province. Alberta has started a similar approach as Saskatchewan with the point system, but how they're doing this, it's a little bit informal. So they're requesting people to send the government, the immigration department, an email stating that they have signed up for the express entry in at the Canadian level, at the federal level, and Alberta in turn would take that information and create their own pool of professionals. So this is not something that you can directly sign up for. You have to do the express entry, and then you have to notify Alberta that you would like to move in Alberta should you be selected. So in essence, it's somewhat of a local pool of professionals, but it's informal. You are sending an email, and in my opinion, I cannot confirm this, but in my opinion, nobody knows what happens with that message. You don't know if you are in that pool. You don't know what your points is, your position is in that queue to be selected as one of the professionals that they want. So a little informal, maybe they're starting with the program, but you can still do that in Alberta. You can still, again, sign up for express entry at the Canadian level and notify Alberta that you have the intent to move to Alberta should you be selected. Okay. Now this one, the one in BC, that's where Vancouver is located. For those who are considering Vancouver, uh, they have a pilot program. So again, every time you see the word pilot program, it means that it's an immigration program that is temporary. If you're ready to apply, go ahead and apply today because you don't know until when that program is going to be available. So they have a tech pilot program. BC is hiring, or employers in BC are hiring technology professionals. Now, you may not live in Vancouver. You may have to live in another city. For example, I've been to Victoria. I've worked there for companies there, and I know that it's a hot market. And it's a beautiful city, a city that I would probably live in if presented the opportunity. So you may not pick and choose where you're gonna live, but the program is open, and there are various positions being considered within the IT, the tech area. So again, link is on the slide deck. You may ask questions if you want directly afterwards about this particular program. But I know this one is live. I know that it's a great opportunity for those who are in. So coast to coast, I think better chances today, and this can change tomorrow. Like I said, these programs are temporary. New ones can come up. The current ones may go away. We never know. But as of today, I personally think the best chances for folks to move to Canada under one of the immigration programs are in the two coasts, if you will, the Atlantic provinces, okay, and Quebec, and also on the BC side using this tech pilot program. Something that can be generous to you if you're considering a prairie province. I think your best bet is Saskatchewan. Okay. Again, I'll repeat. So the Maritimes, the Atlantic immigration program, you can apply to live in PEI, Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland is a great opportunity. Quebec is always being great with immigration, and it's always being active. I mean, I immigrated 8 years ago, and the organizations that I mentioned in my presentation, they are still active and they are still hiring. So I don't see that going away soon. Hopefully, there will be still more opportunities in that area. Then Saskatchewan is a great opportunity. Very rich province as well. It's one of the oil transitioning to natural gas producers, so a lot of money there, a lot of infrastructure. Great city, great province, I should say. And BC. BC is just magnificent. It's beautiful. If you can live there, I'd say go in a heartbeat. But those are the five areas that I'd say look for, uh, study more, and if you're ready to apply, apply right away. Do not wait. Okay, if you think you are ready to apply because you have the education, the age, you're old enough, you are in a age, good age bracket, if you will, you have a family, but you're afraid you don't speak the language, I'd say the first thing you do is invest in learning the language. I mean, none of these programs will hire you because you look pretty or you have the best experience where you live. You need to know the language, all right? You need to know it, and you need to certify that you know it. Oh, I know how to speak English. I take calls every time, but what is your level according with the authorities who are accepted in the immigration program? So, TOEFL certificate, IELTS. How do you score? You can tell me that you speak English, but you cannot tell the immigration that you speak English. You have to prove it. So invest on that before you apply. Okay, if you have the money to invest, you can always come. Um, Using the education stream where you come as a student, your spouse automatically gets a work permit to work anywhere. So I've seen couples who came where the spouse knew how to speak English, had a good job experience in other countries, and also had a degree, were ready to engage into the workforce. So they did that. So the one spouse went to school and the other went to the job market, and that spouse that was in the job market after a year was able, after getting the 1 year experience, was able to apply for permanent residency. So that's a stream as well. But you have to remember, if you come as a college student, you have to know the language nonetheless, okay, to be considered as a college student. Otherwise, you're going to take English classes, and that not qualifies your spouse to work. Okay, so while you study the language, you cannot work, or your spouse cannot work. So if the spouse that's going to school knows how to speak English and is admitted to start college studies, your spouse in that matter, or the other spouse, can work. Your kids can go to school, to public school. If this one spouse cannot go to college directly, it has to study language. None of this other stuff happens. So you're going to be looking at paying, in Calgary, I think it's about $11,000 per term for college, and then you'd be looking at paying your kids' school. Even though it's public, you'd have to pay privately for your kids to go to school if you're not admitted in college. If you're admitted in college, you still pay the 11,000 for the programs, but your kids can go to school for free and your spouse can't work. So that's a stream as well. If you have the money to do that, I've seen many stories that were successful in that way. It's still possible. I think in any province that you look at, including here in Alberta. I think that's all I have. Uh, I have this one phrase that I present on every single one of my presentations: as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens another. If you learn anything from my presentation, I should have said in the beginning, I'm not an immigration expert all that I'm speaking to is based on experience. You can take my word for it if you want to, but I'd say do your studies too. I have links on my presentations. You can uh, access the links, get more information about it, educate yourself. If you have questions, and if I know the answers, I'll help you. But nonetheless, share the information that you learned today. Don't keep to yourself. I don't care if you take any of the stuff that I presented here and you call it your own and you go on social media and say, oh, I discovered all this stuff. I don't really care so long as you are sharing and empowering other people. All right. Make sure that you share and you empower other people. All right. So thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes for questions. I don't know. Let me see if there are any on the chat window. For some reason. All right. We see Soritas saying 40, he's been there 40 years. He's been here in Canada for 40 years. That's very cool. Oh, it was 40 a 40-year long dream country.
I think there's a few questions regarding the recording. So just to confirm, Victor, you're going to post this recording later?
Yes, we'll make all the sessions available later. So if you want to know where it's going to be on the 365 YouTube channel eventually, uh, it's not going to be today, but it's going to be available there. Uh, what else? Saritas, I'm not sure if I understood your comment on. Okay, it was your dream to live in Canada for 40 years, but when I was there, I was surprised about their rule. I live since 2000 in Germany, and everyone live under the same law. Sure, I understand the comment. If you want to clarify, maybe I can respond. I feel like everybody lives by the same law. Uh, I sure hope so. I live that way. I don't expect my neighbor to do something that he thinks he's entitled to do that I am not entitled to live the same way. Um, uh, Eric, Nick, do you have any different experience?
Well, I grew up here, but I did move. I lived in Bermuda for a year. So all I can say is, aside from you offered a lot of technical stuff today, Victor, which is awesome. But I think for anybody who's never lived in another country, and I think Victor, you could probably talk to this more than me, is the culture shock. And I think that's true of anybody moving from anywhere um, to any other place too. You got to realize it's different, right?
Yeah,
People live differently. People like shop differently. They react
that's right.
differently. Just and maybe Victor, you can talk a little bit about. I mean, I don't think like I think you're right. Canada's very welcome, but I'm sure there was some culture shock too that you experienced. Maybe you can talk to that.
Oh yeah, I mean, coming from Brazil, Brazil is a very warm country in a sense that people don't have the imaginary bubble. If you come to Canada, it's one of the things that you're gonna be shocked. If you are at the supermarket or if you're shopping for groceries, you respect people's space. Somebody's staring at the shelves. You don't just cut in front of them. In Brazil, people are more obnoxious of those things. I used to tell my friends Brazilians are the ones who break all the physical laws. You can have 10 people literally at the same space at the same time. You can have people talking over each other. It's just a culture thing. Yeah, I was shocked, but I was shocked as well when I moved to the States. And I was shocked when I visited France last year. I was shocked when I went to Israel the first time. In Israel, because of the religious belief, you cannot uh, drink milk beverages where people serve meat. So my kids, we bought ice cream in one shop, and we were supposed to sit on another place for me to eat because they had already eaten before. And the guy said, "Well, they cannot have ice cream while you eat meat." So it is a shock, but it's the way people live. I mean, if I invite you, Nick, to my house, and I'm not saying that you have this particular behavior, but you don't wear your shirt inside of your house, right? My kids will be shocked because I'm always dressed. I have three girls. For some reason, I don't. They never saw me without a shirt unless we go to the beach or something. It's just the way I live. So I prefer to say that you are coming to somebody else's home, right? Even though I am a Canadian citizen today, I'm not gonna be pushing the way I lived in Brazil into Canada's culture and say, you gotta change, you gotta be more like Brazil. I don't think that's the way it works. It'll be the same as other people coming to my home and say, hey, I'm coming to visit you, and I want you to behave the way I expect. I'll be say, I'll show the door. Here's my door. You can go live the way you want outside of this house. So yeah, there are differences. But I think it's a very respectful place. People will respect you to the extent that you respect them, and I think that's the what I really like about the country.
See, there's a question here about the job market for Microsoft Dynamics professionals in Canada. Victor, oh, it's your show, so you want to remark to that?
I'll speak to and if any of the speakers are here, they wanted to comment, especially around the cities that they live in. You feel welcome to. I work from home, so the market has been very great for me, especially during COVID, because I don't have to work for employers here in Calgary. I do have a customer here in Calgary. I had a customer in Edmonton that has moved on to other things. I have a customer in Montreal, but a lot of my customers are pretty much states in Europe nowadays. So I'm not really forced to a location, but because you're doing immigration based on employment, most likely you have to find a job in the city or the region that you apply to live in, right? So talking about Quebec City is a government city. Uh, I was there 8 years, and there was lots of jobs in Dynamics, even though Dynamics wasn't a very popular technology at the time. Government of Quebec of the province was using Dynamics. The city of Quebec was using Dynamics heavily. It was actually one of the case studies for Microsoft at the time that the city was rewriting their systems using Dynamics on their 311 support systems using Dynamics. So I've seen it, throughout North America. The job market for Power Platform for Dynamics is huge. Nick, what did you read in Ottawa?
Oh, well, is it catch 22? Because in Ottawa, like there's a lot of government work because federal government, and yeah, Power Platform Dynamics is a big thing. The flip side is you need security clearance to get a lot of this government work. And of course,
Hmm.
as an immigrant, that's going to be a lot harder to to do because because there's a lot of background checks and things that have to be
That's
done.
right.
So that's part of the issue. But if you do have that security clearance, whether it's enhanced or secret, and I have secret and stuff like that, there's like I'm getting, I don't work for government projects, and there's a whole other reason why I do that. I have enough work on my own.
Hmm.
But if you do want that government work and you do have the proper clearance, then yeah, there's a very huge number of opportunities. And now because of COVID, before they wanted the bum in seat, they wanted you to show up every day, put on pants. Now they're open for people working from home, but they still prefer them to be Canadian based, like either in Ottawa or Toronto or whatever. But at least the opportunities becoming a little bit more wider there.
Awesome. Eric, do you have any input? I'm not sure if you're there. And feel free, if you want to speak in French, you're welcome to.
I can speak either in English or in French, no problem there. But yeah, like the market is very dynamic, in fact, on the whole power platform. Like at where I work at XRM Vision, we're based in Montreal, and we're just hiring like crazy, and we're expanding out west. And like Nick was saying, and I think you were saying also, like the remote work, like the COVID situation and remote work does help out in being able to reach out in more areas. But yes, everybody's more inclined in having people working locally still, at least being in Canada. And sometimes it's just, just for regulations and being able to access data that is within Canadian clouds, for example, things like
Hmm.
that. So,
There,
but yeah, we're craving for people.
there's one last question. We have 40 seconds left from Sachin Gupta about applying for multiple companies, but then they're not ready to process the work permit. Um, I just think it's part, I think it's just, I know I've worked for large companies, the HR departments are kind of swamped. As much as I hate to say it, there is a preference to people that have their paperwork already in order versus for companies to sponsor that. So I don't know if that's going to change soon, but I think I agree that that's the situation. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. And maybe, Victor, you might have some more info in the last 7 seconds we have left.
All right, I'll be fast. Well, the thing is, I like to be real, okay? In the way that I respond to these things, the I think it's somewhat naive, and I don't say that to diminish the effort of anybody, but it's somewhat naive if you apply for a job in Toronto and you expect the employer to hire you without having the paperwork ready, you not having the paperwork ready to get the job. I mean, employers, I'm an employer myself. I will always prefer to hire someone who's ready to do the job from the get go. So the market will not say, okay, I really like your experience. I want to bring you to Canada and I'm going to wait 10 months to get you here. That does not exist in a real market. So what I would say is try to look for programs, immigration programs that allows for you to get to Canada without the requirement to get the job offer, okay? Without the requirement to wait for a work permit in that sense. As you advance, as you get ahead, an employer may show up and say, where you are in your immigration story, and when they perceive that you are advanced in getting your documents in place, then they will say, okay, I'll wait for you 2 months or wait for you a month and a half because we already have all the paperwork in place. Okay. But you can continue to apply to different companies everywhere. If you want to take that approach, I would go to those cities that I talked having open programs that are more generous today, Atlantic, Quebec City for that matter, and then even BC, because you have more chances to get your work permit in a faster fashion. All right, Nick, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Cool.
And before you get started, let me stop the recording and start again so that
Okay.
we have nice cuts.
Okay,
Well,
perfect.
thanks everybody. Before I go, also make sure you fill up a survey. Uh, that's the only way you can get into the raffle for getting prizes at the end of the event. So make sure you submit a survey on the event, and this is the only way for us to get better in what we do. All right. So thank you very much for your time. I am stopping the recording now.